are you? What do you do here? These are two questions I get asked often. You see, I'm not a US citizen. I'm from India, and I travel a lot. So when I return to the country, I have to stand in a different immigration line at the border. The border is a fascinating space. It's that liminal space, that threshold where it's decided whether or not you're acceptable. You stand there, you wait, with a little anxiety, wondering if this time you're going to be accepted easily or not. And you're called on to ask a specific set of questions. Your name, i.e. who you are, and what you do here. Now, ever since I've been in grad school, and now that I'm a professor at a university, I've always answered this question in some permutation or combination of, I'm a Shakespearean, or if I feel the particular need to impress the person behind that elevated desk, I say, I'm a Shakespeare professor. And immediately the response I get is, oh, I read Romeo and Juliet in school. Or, to be or not to be, that is the question. And at that moment, I have to do everything I can to stop from blurting out, oh God, I hate that play. And indeed, at one point in my life, Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet were my least favorite of all of Shakespeare's plays. A rather interesting coincidence is that earlier on, when I was younger, when I was in grad school, that's when I used to get a lot of Romeo and Juliet references. And later, when I started teaching at university, that's when the to be or not to be started. Now, my interior monologue tells me it's because I have so much professorial gravitas right now. What I do know is that this arc, this movement from Romeo and Juliet to Hamlet, at a moment where who I was and what I did mattered acutely, that has come to shape the way I understand love and how I see myself. Standing in those long immigration lines, often after a long international flight, weary and cranky, I found myself wondering why I had this intense dislike for Romeo and Hamlet. Why did I care? Gradually I realized it's because they both got love wrong. And later on I realized I too had got it wrong. What I would like to share with you today is what I learned thinking through Shakespeare by delving into these two references. And I propose that the questions asked at the immigration border are the very questions we should be asking of ourselves when we come knocking on love's door. Who are you? What do you do here? Let me begin with Romeo and Juliet, just because of its familiarity across the board. Romeo and Juliet has been a part of the American public school curriculum since the 1980s. It's as if, and this is in no small part due to various pop culture adaptations and iterations, Romeo and Juliet has become this placeholder for an ideal young couple in love, a love to aspire toward, the kind of love you want in your life. And I keep thinking, this is the idea of true love that adolescents in public schools get via Shakespeare. I love you. You love me. I'm nothing without you. You complete me, and together we'll fight the entire world to be with each other. Spoiler alert, they kind of end up dying a rather avoidable death in the end, albeit a little tragic. Now, to be fair to them, I too had this very idea of passionate, all-consuming love for the other, a complete giving over of myself to the other. And I will get to the passion part later, but for now, I'd like us to just pause and reflect on the word love. What is love? It's a question that's been asked in a great many songs. It's a question that lies at the heart of all philosophy. Some would argue that it lies at the heart of human experience and what it means to be human. I'd like to narrow down our area of inquiry and turn to the one person in Shakespeare who, ostensibly, epitomizes what it means to be in love. According to Romeo, love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs. being purged, a fire sparkling in lovers' eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with loving tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, a preserving sweet. Ah, the words of an impassioned man. When we meet Romeo at the beginning of the play, he is so in love. Just to be clear, he's not in love with Juliet at this point. That will happen 2 minutes later. At the moment, he's in love with Rosalind. Romeo says, I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He is some other where. Romeo's not here, he says. He's saying yes to love, and he's definitely saying to this particular beloved at the moment, but he is not here. This is Romeo's idea of love. And what's my idea of love? Because I'm an English professor, we will turn to the Oxford English Dictionary for the etymology and the definition of the word love. It's got Indo-European roots, Saxon lub. It has a similar, Sanskrit has a similar word, lubhana, which is linked to desire. The most widely agreed definition of love is, and I quote, to be or become dear or agreeable, to do someone good, to show kindness. So when you're in love, you're doing something. In showing kindness, you are becoming kind, doing and becoming. Thought of this way, then, love is a process, a mode, a modality of being and becoming. I invite you to consider love not as an end result or a product, not some shiny external reality you arrive at in some great grand moment, but a process. So let's turn away from Romeo just for a bit and turn to the one character in Shakespeare who does a lot of processing. Hamlet. Hamlet, or as I have described him to my 8-year-old, as the little engine who just couldn't, does a lot of processing. His famous to be or not to be soliloquy that most immigration and customs officers seem to know is one of the most famous of all of Shakespeare's speeches. It's commonly assumed to be a contemplation of suicide, about some deep, profound existential crisis. In its simplest form, it is a meditation on what it means to be and the process of becoming. You see, Hamlet is faced with a choice. He has to make a decision. He's contemplating who he is and who he will become through his actions. This moment of self-reflection is also a moment of self-definition, and he's really struggling and he's tormented at this moment. I describe this moment as an intensely passionate moment. I had said earlier that we'd come to passion later, so let's turn to the Oxford English Dictionary for the definition of passion. Passion is defined as strong emotion and love, and passion in its theological sense is also defined as torment and suffering. And that's why I describe this moment when Hamlet's really struggling and grappling with who he is as an intensely passionate moment. To be, to decide what you will be, what you will become through your actions, through your doing. Not to be, to decide who you're not. You see, it is at once a process of becoming and unbecoming, a letting go of parts of you that are not you, an unraveling, a peeling away of the layers of who you're not. This is a moment also of doing and an undoing and an unlearning. And it's a very difficult process. It's deliberate and it's conscious. Read this way, Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy then is about welcoming the stranger within. getting to know the person you had forgotten, the person you had not been attentive to. You, yourself, the you who is not here. I had said that this arc, this trajectory from Romeo and Juliet to Hamlet, that the immigration and customs officers inadvertently created for me, has come to shape how I understand love and how I see myself. I think there's a lesson here for all of us. What if, when we first came into intimations of love, at the threshold of love, we paused, not unlike we are perforce required to do at the immigration border? What if, instead of racing and running to reach for our shiny beloved, our Rosalind, our Juliet, like Romeo, and then losing ourselves, what if we turned our gaze to ourselves, like Hamlet does? Remember, to love is to show kindness. And what if we started this journey of love by showing kindness to ourselves first and foremost? In doing so, we go far beyond Hamlet ever did in our reflective process and our passion. Instead of love and passion, then, perhaps our attention should be on self-compassion and kindness to the self. And then, possibly, eventually, at some point, self-acceptance. You see, this was the step that I seem to have skipped over for decades. I could see these Shakespearean characters, and I could study and analyze them critically, and I could tell you what they were missing, and then I could loathe them for it. But I never turned my lens onto myself. I always thought love meant something for somebody else. Nobody ever told me that it was even possible to love myself, let alone vital to my being fulfilled and well. I always thought to love me was somebody else's job. And I did fall in love again and again, and again, and again, and again, but never with myself first. Like Romeo, I wasn't there. I was looking outside myself. Now, surely, you all know someone like me. People who turn to other people to make us feel loved, to define us, to complete us, to mend us. That was me. The question I wanted to answer enthusiastically was, oh, what can I do to change myself for someone else? I was always stepping up to meet somebody else's expectation of who I am. And, in a sense, I was also trying to manipulate their responses to me by trying to answer, oh, what can I do to make them love me more? You see, I was trying to fill a lack by turning to someone else, and it was a futile effort because it's a lack that only I could address and fill. I wasn't in a loving and kind relationship with myself to begin with. I wasn't even self-aware to know that I had to do the hard work, the passionate work, and indeed to endure the suffering that comes with turning our gaze inward, with self-reflection, and asking myself, who am I? What do I want? What do I want to be and become? Love is not passive. Love is an embracing of all emotion, of all of yourself. It's an action word. It's ongoing. And that is why I said that love is a mode of engaging and learning. It teaches you about who you are. It helps you understand how you see your place in the world, how you see the world around you. Love and passion facilitate and are very important in this journey of self-discovery and self-exploration. To hearken back to the beginning of this talk and to turn our gaze to the border one more time, I wonder if the border standing there wondering whether or not you're acceptable, if that isn't somehow an analogy for the moment that we are at the threshold of love, what if this was an opportunity for us to engage in some self-reflection and kindness to the self, and a self-acceptance of who we are becoming and unbecoming? Because like love, we are not a product or an end result. We are a process, and we are in process. And our answer to the question of who are you? Who am I? It will change, and it should. Because what do we do here? We engage, we commit, we make the choice of, we engage in the never-ending labor of love, and we commit to learning more about ourselves. That's what we do in this moment. To be and not to be. That's the answer. Just to be you. It's okay. Trust me, I'm a Shakespeare professor. And I've tried it the other way. And I've got it wrong enough times for all of us. To be kind and accepting of yourself is a prelude to the greatest romance you'll ever experience, to the most adventurous journey you'll ever embark on. One that begins with self-reflection, self-compassion, and eventual self-acceptance. So, try it out. Whatever are you waiting for? Commit to being passionately in love with yourself first. Thank you.